哦，在Focus来之前，然后顺便那个线上读者应该也有在线上，再麻烦大家帮我们 AC 就是美国资料中心做一下这个简单的问卷，哦，那问题都跟之前应该基本都差不多了，哦，那就是帮个忙，哦，谢谢。
How's everyone today? Pretty good? Good. Hope you're, I can't figure out this weather. It's so cool for May. Although it's already, I mean, it's not cold, but it's cool, or been cooler. But I'm not complaining. Once again, I hope we get more rain. And I know it'll probably get very hot later on, as it usually does. So I'll enjoy the cool weather or cooler weather while I still have it. Okay. So anyhow, I thought we'd start with this article. You know, it's not too often or not every day that Taichung makes the front page, and I didn't hear about this accident until yesterday late afternoon, and somebody sent me a message and they said, "Did you hear about this?" And I was like, and it's obviously a tragedy because it was a fatal accident. But I don't know if many of you ride the MRT often or regularly, but I use it quite a bit. Not every day, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. I'll ride it for some reason, but I enjoy it. I appreciate it. And so it's kind of too bad to see this accident happen. And it's a very strange accident. It's when I was describing this to my friends outside of Taiwan, I described it as, it's not completely this way, but I did call it, we say sometimes a freak accident. Okay. Now this is F-R-E, okay, E-A-K. Okay. Now a freak accident is an accident where it's very, well, does everybody know what that means? Yeah, unexpected, but often it means it's almost like really unexpected, like in a strange way, like it should not have happened. Let's say, somebody's walking down the street and a piano falls on their head. That would be a freak accident, because you're like, this almost never happens. The chance of it happening was very small. Now, of course, this is kind of a freak accident because how often does a crane fall on top of you? I mean, I told my friends, I said, there's so many of these cranes in Taiwan or Taichung that now I'm a little bit afraid, like I'm always going to be looking up. But anyhow, a freak accident is just something that happens that's very, very unusual. The chance of it happening is very small, and yet it happens. Now, freak has other meanings too. What else does freak mean? If someone is a freak, it just means they're really, chi chi guai guai de. There's some weird, yeah. Like, if you see something that just seems really, really out of the ordinary, very unusual, you might describe it. Yeah, we could say, like he said, this is an expression, freaks me out. It's kind of a little bit like, this is kind of a slang sort of way of saying things. But if something freaks you out, it means it kind of makes you feel very afraid or worries you. But usually in a slightly odd way, like if someone is doing, maybe your friend is doing something and you're like, stop that, it's freaking me out. Maybe your friend is acting very strangely, or they're saying something that's very strange, and you say, don't do that, that freaks me out. It makes me feel weird. There's another term we use sometimes. You see the word a freak of nature. Sorry, that's an R. A freak of nature would be something that is very, very odd, like it's not normal. Maybe it's natural, but it's okay. For example, what we can use this term seriously, or we can use it in a joking way. Let's say, for example, you see some guy and he's super strong or he's super tall, and you say, wow, that person is a freak of nature, right? Because most people aren't that tall or aren't that strong, or they can do something very unusual. They have some unusual physical ability. We might say that's a freak of nature. So just something that's natural, but it's very odd. I mean, it doesn't normally happen. Yes? Well, you could. I mean, like I said, you can use it in sort of a joking way. You can say, wow, you're a real freak of nature, because most people cannot do that. And then, of course, we have the word freaky, which is simply something that's really strange or odd or weird. Something's very freaky. Okay, we can use the word in that way. So anyhow, this word freak, obviously, you can see it gets used in many ways. Why don't we read these together? Freak, freak, freak accident, freak accident. Okay, freaks me out. Why don't we say it? That freaks me out. Okay, freak of nature. Freak of nature. And then finally, freaky. Freaky. Right. So if something happens and you're like, wow, that's really freaky. That never happens. That's really weird. Okay. So anyhow, this word freak gets used in many different ways. And as I said, this accident yesterday was a little bit of a freak accident. I mean, it just seems kind of odd that a crane would fall and hit the train tracks. So anyhow, it says here, train hits fallen crane boom in Taichung, killing one. Now, you know what a crane, of course, is, right? A crane, there's many kinds of cranes. This is obviously a building crane, like you see on top of many, many buildings in Taiwan and Taichung. But a boom, normally when we think of boom, we think of like a loud sound, right? Or an explosion, right? Like you can say it boomed, the thunder boomed in the sky, it made a booming sound. But here it's a mingzi, it's a noun. And when we say a crane boom, what is it? Well, no, actually it's a part of the crane. It would be the closest thing to the crane, maybe we could say like the arm of the crane. So a crane has a part of the crane that goes up and down. That's called a boom. So with these building cranes, often they're sticking straight out and they kind of move like this, right? So that's called, it's part of the crane. But think of it as the arm of the crane. We call that the boom. Okay, so let's say it together. Crane boom. Crane boom. I'll just mention a crane is one of, there's another definition for crane. What is it? A bird, right? What kind of, how do you say this in Chinese? Yeah, they're usually white and they have very long wings. Yeah, very graceful. Yeah, cranes. And I've seen them in Taiwan before. So, okay, so let's read this together and see what's going on here. It says, a woman was killed and 10 people were injured yesterday when a train on the Taichung MRT system hit a crane boom that had fallen onto the tracks. Okay, of course, the train tracks. Okay, so yeah, so I think it's pretty straightforward. Let's read this together. A woman was killed and 10 people were injured yesterday when a train on the Taichung MRT system hit a crane boom that had fallen onto the tracks. Okay, so it says here the incident occurred at 12:29 p.m. at the intersection of Wenxing South 5th and Wenxing South roads in Nantun District near the metro system's Fengle Park station. Okay, I think you know all this. We don't have to read all these names. But, you know, metro is a very general term for 捷运. You know, sometimes we say MRT or mass rapid transit, or in Hong Kong, I think they call it the MTR. But often people will say our city's metro system. And when they say metro, it usually is referring to like some sort of 捷运 system. Okay, so why don't we read this together? Metro system. Metro system. Right, so this word is very broadly used. Sometimes it's part of the official name. It actually is called, like in Paris, I believe the name of the MRT is actually called the Paris Metro. But you know, if you just say, well, I'm going to ride the metro home, that's what it means. Okay, let's go on. I don't think we have to read those road names. So I'll read this. It says, a 52-year-old woman, surnamed Lin, an assistant professor in Providence University's Department of Law, was found dead. Taichung Fire Bureau 6th Corps Captain Pan De Zhang said. Okay, so she's an assistant professor at Providence University, of course, is Jingyi Daxue. They have an English name too. So yeah, unfortunately, this woman was killed. Now, I want to mention, I mentioned this last week, just like we say 美国那个 it doesn't have to be 美国, it could be Taiwan, but 陆战队, right? We said Marine Corps, but here also this word, even though there's no S, it's still pronounced core with no P. So we say core, okay? Yeah, not corp, so core. Although I will say there's a word that sounds very similar to this. Yeah, CORPSE. Does anyone know what a corpse is? Yeah, dead body. What is it? 尸体, right? And here we do pronounce the P and the S, okay? So why don't we say that? Corpse. Corpse. Yeah, so that's a dead body. But here, of course, it's a different word. Okay, so let's read this together. A 52-year-old woman, surnamed Lin, an assistant professor in Providence University's Department of Law, was found dead. Taichung Fire Bureau 6th Corps Captain Pan De Zhang said. Right, okay. And, yeah. Providence, yeah, it could mean grace from God. It could mean the will of God. It could mean, for example, someone say, by providence, I was able to do this. It means by God's grace or God's will or God's power. So yeah, providence has. Yeah, so yeah, something made or simply by the providence of God, I was able to do this or do that. So it means through God's power, God's grace, or God's will, I was able to do that. So yeah, it's a word that often gets used with religion. Yeah, and of course, Jingyi Daxue is a Catholic school, right? 天主教. Okay, so let's read this. Keep going. It says, the train ran into the crane boom lying on the rails after it fell more than 30 stories from a nearby construction site and pierced the MRT system's sound insulation barriers. Okay, so this crane boom fell more than 30 floors. I'm sure you probably saw the video. I don't know who took this video, but you can see the whole crane falling. So it fell from a nearby construction site. I mean, I would go further than say nearby. I would probably say it was, and here's a good word, adjacent. Okay. Now, adjacent means next to. Okay. For example, you could say she is sitting adjacent to me, or the courthouse is adjacent to the library. It means next to. So you could say, I think it'd be more clear to say from an adjacent construction site, because it was right next to it. Okay, so it doesn't mean nearby, it means next to. Okay, so why don't we say this word adjacent? Adjacent. And usually we say adjacent to something. This was adjacent to that, or adjacent to that. So yeah, it's a good word to know. So anyhow, it says from a nearby construction site, and site, of course, where they're putting up a building, and pierce. And what does pierce mean? Yeah, going through, right? To pierce, right? To usually when I think of the word pierce, I think of something very sharp and pointed, right? So you could say that the needle, pierced his skin, right? But we can use this word in other ways too. For example, you can say her words pierced my heart, right? If someone says something that hurts you or makes you feel really affects you, you could say it pierced my heart, and usually we only say pierce my heart. We don't say pierce my brain or something like that. If we talk about emotion, so something that pierces your heart is something that strongly affects you, sometimes in a hurtful way. Not always, though. You could say something they said really moved you, made you feel very moved by something. So anyhow, why don't we say this together? Pierced. Pierced. Okay, so it pierced, it kind of went through the MRT system's sound insulation barriers. Now, what's insulation? Yeah, it's like, when I think of insulation, I think of what? Yeah, it's a little bit like the word, I'll share this with you, a buffer. Okay, a buffer is like something that cushions, sometimes we would say like a cushion, Cushion means to soften or to create a barrier, So a buffer is like, we can say, well, this aisle creates a buffer between these two areas. It's almost like a separation, or a space. But here, insulation means, what insulate means to kind of protect against something. And so normally when we have a building or something, what is insulation used to protect us from? Heat, or sound, or even or temperature. I guess you could have insulation for cold too. I know in America, most buildings, houses, especially houses, homes, private homes, when they put the building up, they actually install insulation. So, like for example, in the ceiling, they'll have this material. Usually, it almost looks like foam or like almost like. Yeah, it's like blanket. It almost looks like a blanket, but it's very thick, and they put it in the walls. And so what happens is that when in the wintertime, when it's very cold outside, it keeps the cold from coming in. And then, of course, in the summer, I think it also tries to keep that heat from coming in. So we say heat insulation but like you said, the other insulation would also be sound. So, for example, in some rooms where they need to keep it very quiet, you'll see this foam pads on the walls and on the ceiling to keep the sound from going out or coming in. So that room is very, very silent. We call that sound insulation. So there's many kinds of insulation. We could even say, like, if you wear a certain kind of jacket, for cold weather, you know, they have a kind of jacket called a down jacket. Down means it has these feathers. What is it? We call that a down jacket, okay? And it has like feathers from birds inside, and we call that down insulation, or we say that jacket is insulated against the cold. It protects you from the cold. So this word insulate, to insulate, of course, if we want to use this as a 动词, we just had a te, right? To insulate, okay? So you can say the jacket insulated me from the cold. It protected me from the cold. Or this jacket uses down insulation as a 名词, okay? So why don't we say this first as a 动词, to insulate. To insulate. Insulation. Insulation. Right. Okay. So the MRT sound insulation barriers. And of course, a barrier is like a wall, right? Anything that stops something from going in or out, we say is a barrier. Like this wall here is a barrier. And of course, you know, the Taichung MRT has this sound insulation barrier all along the whole way, right? Everywhere you look, there's like this glass wall that comes up over the bridge there. So yeah, that's a sound insulation barrier. Okay, so let's read this then. The train ran into the crane boom lying on the rails after it fell more than 30 stories from a nearby construction site and pierced the MRT system's sound insulation barriers. Let's say that last part again. Insulation barriers. Okay. So, yeah, and I just want to note here, of course, we can say 30 stories or 30 floors, you know, any way you want to put it. You could say this building is, I don't know, 6 stories high. So that word stories is used for that too. Okay, so it says here, surveillance footage showed the boom falling from the nearly completed structure. A section of the boom pierced the first car. Separate footage taken inside the train showed. Okay, so we've talked about the word surveillance before. It's when you watch something, right? So for example, we could say maybe that's a surveillance camera because it's watching this room, you know, and in Taiwan, it seems like all along the roads, there's many surveillance cameras to watch people or watch traffic. So surveillance is to watch, to monitor. Okay, so let's say that together, surveillance. Surveillance. And footage, of course, simply means a piece of, or a clip. Yeah, we often use the word clip, C-L-I-P. You can say a clip of a video clip, you know, or we say video footage. It means a section of video. We could use it also, we say a movie clip. I guess we could say a music clip. But normally clip and footage is used for video. Footage is always used for video, not for sound, but for video. Okay, so yeah. So why don't we say it together? Footage. Footage. Okay, so surveillance footage showed the boom falling onto the from the nearly completed structure. So this building is almost done. If you saw it, it looks like it's almost ready to go. And then it says the section of the boom, part of the boom, pierced the first car. Separate footage taken from inside the train showed. Okay, so let's read this together. Surveillance footage showed the boom falling from the nearly completed structure. A section of the boom pierced the first car. Separate footage taken inside the train showed. Okay, No, that's a photo caption. Okay, so it says the Taichung Fire Bureau transported people to hospitals for treatment for mostly minor injuries, the Taichung city government said, adding that one of the injured people is Canadian. Okay, so here's a funny thing. I know this guy. Yeah. So he comes to a lot of 美国商会 events. I've known him for years. He's a teacher, and I think he does some business in Taichung. But yeah, I know him quite well. So yeah, I was kind of surprised. I was, when the article came out in the newspaper, they blurred his face, right? So I was like, who's this? And then I saw it on TV, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know this guy. So yeah, fortunately he's okay. He was injured. I saw he had a bandage on his head, but he seemed okay. But yeah. Okay, so anyhow, let's read this. The Taichung, before we go on, minor injuries, of course, would be small injuries, right? If it was if it wasn't, we would say a serious or a major injury, right? Something that's more significant. Okay. Let's read this then. The Taichung Fire Bureau transported people to hospitals for treatment for mostly minor injuries, the Taichung city government said, adding that one of the injured people is Canadian. Okay. So it says here, the Taichung City Police Department implemented traffic restrictions in the area after the incident. Okay, and then it go on, and we keep reading. MRT services between Beitun Main Station and Taichung City Hall continued as usual, with dispatch buses shuttling passengers to and from the Jiuzhangli and high-speed rail Taichung stations as the Taichung Mass Rapid Transit Corps worked to restore full operations to the MRT line. Okay, so implement, of course, we've talked about this word many times, means what? To put into practice or put into action. You can say today the government implemented a new law, okay? Maybe there's a new rule or new law or requirement. It was implemented. It was put into action. So let's say it together, implemented. Implemented. Now, of course, traffic restriction, restrict means to what? To limit, right? To 限制, right? So there were traffic restrictions in the air. Of course, they were doing all this rescue emergency work, and so they had to limit or restrict or close traffic there. So let's say that too. Restrictions. Okay, and then MRT systems, okay, between these two stations with dispatch buses. Now, when you dispatch, I don't know, I think we've learned this word, but when you dispatch something, what does that mean? Right, to send out. So often we have a dispatch driver or dispatch service or dispatch, anything where you send something out. This word gets used in many different ways, but you can use it in a very normal way. For example, you can say, I ordered a meal from the restaurant and I dispatched my friend to go get it, or I dispatched my son to go pick up the food. Okay, so it means just to send out. Okay, but here it's used as a 形容词, as a dispatch bus, a bus that they sent out to do this. Okay, so why don't we say a word together? Dispatch. Now, it's interesting because I think there's a slight difference in pronunciation. Here's a 形容, you can say dispatch driver, dispatch bus, but if you say to dispatch, then as a 动词, the emphasis goes to the last syllable. So we say to dispatch, I want to dispatch him out to get something. So why don't we say this first as a 形容词, dispatch, and then to dispatch as a 动词. Okay, now you know what shuttle means, right? So, in many places, including Taiwan, we have shuttle buses, right? So if we have a shuttle bus, or sometimes we simply say a shuttle. We don't even have to say bus. We can say, I took the shuttle to the airport, or I took the airport shuttle, okay? A shuttle bus, what does that mean, basically? Right, to go back and forth between two places, okay? Often as a very regular service. We even have, in some places, we say sometimes a shuttle air service or flights. You know, I know that in America, or Japan, or even before, between Taichung and Taipei, they used to have this almost like a shuttle air service, right? There used to be between Shuinan Airport and Taipei, you know, before the Gaotie, they always had these planes flying back and forth every 30 minutes almost. But I know in America, when I think of shuttle flights between places like New York and Boston, you know, they're very close, but people fly because they want to go there quickly. Or between Tokyo and Osaka, you know, they have airplanes that are just constantly flying back and forth. But here we have buses, shuttle buses, okay? So why don't we say that first word together over there, shuttle. Shuttle. Okay, so that can be a 名词 or a 形容词, either way. And then as a 动词, we say shuttling. Shuttling. Okay, so these buses were shuttling passengers to and from, okay, and that's a good expression, to and from, okay, back and forth, to and from means, you know, going both ways, back. So to and from these two stations as the Taichung, you know, we say MRT, Mass Rapid Transit Corps, work to restore, to bring back full operations. Okay, so let's read this together then. The Taichung City Police Department implemented traffic restrictions. Okay, let's say the word again, implemented. Traffic restrictions. Restrictions. In the area after the incident. Okay. MRT services between Beitun Main Station and Taichung City Hall continued as usual, with dispatch buses shuttling passengers to and from the Jiujiangli and the Jiujiangli and high-speed rail Taichung stations as Taichung Mass Rapid Transit Corps work to restore full operations to the MRT line. Okay. So here it says the Taichung Urban Development Bureau at 1:52 p.m. ordered the immediate cessation of work at the construction site and launched an investigation into the cause of the incident. Now, urban development is like we say, 都市 都市 I don't know, 发展 or, you know. So urban is what? Means city. And what's the opposite of urban? Not rural, yeah. So R-U-R-A-L, rule, okay? It's a funny word. It's a little bit hard to pronounce, rule. It's almost like the word rule, like a 规定, but we pronounce it rule. Okay, so rule means like 乡下, right? Countryside. But he also mentions suburban. Let me write this down here. Suburban. And what does that mean? Here we have, see the words urban, and then we have the word sub, right? Sub means below, right? So suburban means what? On the out of the city, but not the Xiangxia area yet. It's kind of in between, right? I guess Taiwan has suburban areas. Sometimes it's hard to tell. We might say that if you went out to, I don't know, Hanzi, or somewhere kind of outside the downtown, we might say that's a suburban area. Dali, yeah, maybe, or Taiping or something like that. Where? Yeah, Daya, yeah, maybe that's more suburban. But in Taiwan, to me, as an American, it doesn't feel suburban. It feels like part of the city. It's funny. I've met several Americans or Westerners when they first visit Taiwan, and they arrive in Taoyuan, right? And they take the bus or the train from Taoyuan down to Taichung, and they tell me some of them say I can't tell where Taoyuan ended and Taichung began. It seems like one big urban area, right? There's no countryside. Right. In America, it's more clearly defined. Okay, here's the city, this is urban, here's the suburbs, and here's the rural area. Now, as we can use the word as a 名词, this is a 形容词, right? We can say the suburbs, okay, without the an. S-U-B-U-B-S. S, and it's always an S. We just say suburbs. I live in the suburbs, okay? So that means a part of the city that's kind of on the outskirts. So why don't we say these things? Why don't we say these words together? Urban, okay, and then rural, suburban, and then as a 名词, suburbs. Remember the pronunciations on the first syllable, suburbs. Okay. Now these other two words, we don't say I live in the rural. We don't say that. It's always a 形容词. But this word can be turned into a 名词, suburbs. He lives in the suburbs. Okay. So yeah, anyhow, those are common words. You mean it's actually no, we don't say, we say a bedroom town. Yeah, bedroom community actually is more. Bedroom community is an expression. A bedroom community. I don't think we probably say community more than, so that's a T. We say community more than town. Bedroom community is basically where people go home to. They don't work there. They live there, and then they come back and forth to work. So, and often has the idea of being a very quiet community where people go home. They work in the city, and then they go home, and they obviously they sleep there. That's where they live, and it's quiet. So we say a bedroom community. That's kind of an expression. Why don't we say together, bedroom community? Okay. So anyhow, let's go back to this then. Oh, and I forgot, this is a good word. Cessation. What does that mean? To stop. Okay. I know we've never learned that word before. So the immediate cessation. Now you could say anything. You could say the cessation of fighting between the two countries, the cessation of the protests, the cessation of work, or anything. It means to stop something from or stop something, from going on. Usually it's used for activities, whether that be a work or a war or a protest or anything where there's an activity going on and you stop it, or so something, it has that idea to it. So why don't we say together, cessation? Okay. And what word comes from that word, or actually cease, right? So this is related to the word to cease. Okay. So to cease means to stop. Often in war, if they're fighting, we say cease fire. It means stop shooting. Okay. A ceasefire. Now, ceasefire can be a 名词. You can say the two countries agreed to a ceasefire. They agreed to have, or to a ceasefire means a stopping of fighting. They don't fight. They're not shooting at each other. So so this word cease is related to cessation. Okay, so why don't we say together, cease, to cease. Okay, so it's another common word. Okay, so any questions? Okay, so they have to investigate how this crane fell. You know, I was very puzzled by this because these cranes are supposed to be very strong, right? I mean, there's high winds. I've seen them in typhoons, and they're up there. And so it's kind of strange the crane would just fall off the building unless they were doing some repair work or they were going to move it or something. But it's just very unusual for the crane to fall. But you know what? My friends went online and they started searching, and they found out that these accidents like this have happened in other countries, including the U.S. and Australia. They said, wait a minute, here's a crane that fell off a building. There's a crane that fell off a building. I thought, uh-oh, you know, now I'm going to be really afraid everywhere I go looking at the cranes, like, are they going to fall on me? So anyhow, it does happen occasionally, but of course, most of the time it does not happen. Okay, so let's go on and read this then. MRT services between Beitun Main Station and Taichung City Hall continued as usual, with dispatch buses shuttling passengers to and from the Jiujiangli and high-speed rail Taichung stations. As Taichung Mass Rapid Transit Corps worked to restore full operations to the MRT line. You know, something just occurred to me, and I might be wrong here. Let me just see here. Okay, so wait a minute. I just noticed something I wasn't even thinking, but I was correct when I said that this is the Taichung Bureau 6 Corps, right? Because Corps is like almost like a military or government group, right? Like a team, right? But I just noticed something. I read this without even thinking about it. Down here, the Taichung Mass Rapid Corps actually is different. This is a corporation, okay? So this is a company. So when we say a company, we don't say corps, we say a corp, or actually we should say corporation. What I would normally do is I put a period here, right? Because this is part of a longer word, corporation. So I would either say corporation. I guess you could say corp, but corp sounds a little bit weird. Sometimes people say that Mass Rapid Corps, Transit Corp, but corporation would be better. So yeah, this is actually different from the word above. If it's a government or military group, team, we would say corps, you know, but here it's a corporation, right? So why don't we say the full word together? Corporation. Corporation. Okay. Yeah, let's read this then too. The Taichung Urban Development Bureau at 1:52 p.m. ordered the immediate cessation of work at the construction site and launched an investigation into the cause of the incident. Right. Okay. Now let's go on here. Taichung Mayor Lu Shouyuan told the reporters that the company in charge of the construction site, High Wealth Construction Company, would face a hefty fine if it is found to have failed to observe construction safety, and the city government would demand compensation from it. Okay, now there's a couple words here. First of all, of course, we have this construction company. What is it called? Xinfu. Yeah. Okay. What is this word hefty? What's another word for that? Yeah. What would be a really basic way of saying hefty? Starts with an H. Close. Heavy. Okay, so if something is heavy, we say it's hefty. We could actually even describe a person as being hefty if they're a little bit large, right? Maybe a little bit overweight. But we can say that bag that's a hefty bag. It means it's heavy. So we can say a heavy fine, right? You could say a high fine, a heavy fine, but hefty is probably closest to the word heavy, okay, if something is hefty, okay? So you can say that's a really hefty table or bag or purse. It means it's heavy, okay? So why don't we say this together? Hefty. Hefty. Okay, so hefty fine if it is found to have failed to observe construction safety. And the government would demand, and we've learned this word before, compensation means what? It means to basically give you money for something, right? So it doesn't have to be a fine. A fine is one kind of compensation. If you make a mistake or it's your problem and you have to pay compensation. But it also, what's the most common form of compensation? A salary, right? Because you do work and they pay you for your work, so that's compensation. So, there have been times where somebody says, hey, I want you to help me with something, or can you do this, or can you do that project? And you say, oh yeah, I'd love to, but is there going to be any compensation? So if you say, if there's going to be any compensation, it means, is anyone going to pay me for this time or my work, So this is a very common, very broad word when basically you have to pay something for something. Maybe it's something you did, or it could be here a mistake you made, right? So here, why don't we say together, compensation. Compensation. And before we go on, we could say as a 动词, it means to compensate. You can say they compensated me for my time. Okay, so why don't we say it together, to compensate. To compensate. Yeah, you had a... Restitution is kind of like to... it's kind of like to make up for something. Like sometimes you have to pay someone, or you have to do something to make up for something that you have not done or some error you made. So sometimes we say pay restitution, okay? So for example, let's say someone has suffered from an injustice. I'll give you a good example. Sometimes you hear, not too often, but in Taiwan or the US, where someone gets sent to prison and then later they find that actually they did not commit the crime. They're innocent, right? And so then maybe they've been in prison for, 5 years or 10 years. And then the government says, okay, sorry, you can come out, you're free. And for that, the government has to pay restitution, or they have to provide restitution, because basically this was wrong, right? They should not have gone to prison. They were innocent and they spent all this time in prison. So the government sometimes will pay, or sometimes maybe it's not the government, maybe there's someone else that has to provide or pay restitution. It means to make up for that, So it's often the idea of giving back or paying back for some sort of unfair treatment or behavior. Why don't we say together, restitution? Restitution. Yeah. So yeah, often this word is affiliated or is connected to injustice. If there's some injustice, Right now, there is a very, very controversial discussion in America about whether or not the government should provide restitution or pay for African Americans because of slavery, right? Slavery was, of course, a long time ago, about 150, 60 years ago. But the idea is that the government should pay them because of this injustice they suffered. Now, it was very interesting. I read just this morning that there was a discussion or a proposal to pay every African American in California, 加州, 1.2 million US dollars as restitution, okay, and the governor, the 州长, said, no, we will not do that. But it's a debate in some places. some Americans say this is ridiculous. We shouldn't have to do that. That was a long time ago. Why are we even talking about this? And of course, some people say, oh no, we have to do this for justice. So anyhow, it's a debate. Okay, so let's go on. Oh, did we read this yet? No, we haven't read this yet. Okay, so let's read this. Taichung Mayor Lu Xiuyan told reporters that the company in charge of the construction site, High Wealth Construction Company, would face a hefty fine if it is found to have failed to observe construction safety. And the city government would demand compensation from it. Okay, now there's one word here I want to explain. Observe, okay? Now, observe normally means what? To watch, right? To see. You know, I observed the concert. I observed his action. Okay, but here what does it mean? It means something different. To follow, right? You say to observe traffic rules, to observe construction safety. It means to follow. Okay. Yeah, you could say abide by, to follow, to there's probably different words to say that. To abide by, to follow. Yeah, to abide by. Okay. To adhere to. Okay. These are all basically the same idea. But here also to observe the rule, to observe the law, okay, means to follow. So, yeah, adhere, you know, the word adhere is kind of an interesting word. You know what that word means? To stick to, right? We could even say that, to stick to the law, to adhere. So from there, you know, to adhere, it comes, you know, like a tape. You know, we use tape for many things, or glue is a kind of adhesive, okay? Adhesive means something that's sticky. Like, so when you use glue, it's a kind of adhesive, or tape. To tape something, it's a kind of adhesive. It's something that's sticky, okay? So anyhow, these are all, when we talk about rules or guidelines or laws, we can use these expressions. So why don't we say this together? To observe, to follow, to abide by, to adhere to, right? And there's probably other words we're not remembering. Same thing. Now we wouldn't say to abide by a holiday, but that's a good point. Is to observe a holiday or observe a festival. More probably when we say a holiday, it means to basically celebrate or follow whatever that holiday it requires us to do, right? Yeah, to follow a tradition. Yeah, I guess there we could say the word for a tradition, like some sort of 传统 or 风俗习惯, a custom, right? To abide by, to observe but often we say to observe. For example, I often tell my friends, Taiwan does not officially observe Christmas. It's not a holiday here, but it does observe like 中秋节 or whatever. It does follow those. It recognizes or follows that holiday. Sorry, you had a question? It's the same idea. We say observe, basically to celebrate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that has nothing to do with observing a holiday. I mean, it could, I guess. It means. No, we just say that's a. It's just a extra day. I'm sure there's an official way of saying that, but it's not coming to my mind right now. Yeah, we could say we observe the holiday on Monday, or we have Monday off to observe this holiday. Okay, it means to celebrate that holiday, to mark that holiday. So yeah, it's anyhow. The word observe gets used in many different ways. Of course, the most basic way is to watch, right? To watch something. I observed his behavior. Okay, so yeah, it's a good word to remember because it has different meanings to it. Okay. To do what? Live up to is it means follow, but it has a different idea behind it. To live up to means to meet a certain standard, right? I want to live up to his expectations of me. You know, for example, if your parents have very high expectations of you, what is that? 期待, right? You say, I want to live up to those expectations. I want to follow in those expectations. I want to live up to this standard, you know, this standard. Maybe your school has a certain standard, or your religion has a certain standard, and you say, I want to live up to this. So it means I want to meet that standard. I want to meet that expectation. So when we say live up to, probably the closest word is to meet that standard or expectation or whatever. So it has a slightly different meaning, okay? But different. Obey means to do what someone says, but there's this idea of meeting that standard, to reach that level, okay? Be high enough, good enough. Okay, so I think we can go on then. So anyhow, it says here, the city's primary concern, main concern, is to treat the injured passengers, Lou said. So yeah, I hope obviously that the people who are injured are okay. It's very tragic, of course, that this woman was killed. And hopefully they can figure out a way to not make this happen again. You know, the one thing that strikes me about this accident is that apparently, from what everyone said, including that Canadian guy, the accident happened before the train was leaving the station, right? So technically, to me, I guess I wasn't there, but it sounds to me like someone maybe could have stopped that train, right, before it hit the construction crane. In fact, the Canadian guy was saying that the train, the MRT employees were yelling, saying, "Stop the train, stop the train," and then it kept going. So this is one. I told my friends this is one big disadvantage, you know, 缺点 of a driverless train. You know, now of course driverless trains have advantages also. You know, 优点, right? But a 缺点, if you have a driver, right, someone who's driving the train, they see there's a problem, they can stop the train. The trains don't have drivers. There's no driver there's no, you know, 司机 or whatever in the train. It's automatic. It's a driver. We say driverless, LESS, driverless train. So, you know, if you don't have a driver, then, you know, yeah. But the other thing is too that I was watching, someone on the news was saying this. These train systems also have surveillance cameras too, right? So they should always be watching the tracks, right? You would think there's always, you know, you always see those pictures of the control center with all the cameras, you know, and they're watching everything. You would think that somebody says, oh, there's an accident, stop the train, right? Don't let it go. So I don't know. I think although the biggest problem was this is the main cause of the accident, I think that the MRT company also needs to think about their procedures, right? Like in the future, if there's an emergency, how do we stop the train? I mean, is anyone watching? Is there an automatic system? You know, what happens, you know? So anyhow, that's a question. Hopefully we learn from our mistakes and our accidents, you know, so that they don't happen again. Okay, so let's go on to another one. I thought this is interesting. This is also related to transportation. Unfortunately, it's also related to an accident. But it's very interesting. A lot of people have been debating this in Taiwan recently, you know, is how to prevent more accidents, especially for non-drivers. Okay, so here it says scramble crossings sought. at intersections. Now, that's a very interesting word. What does scramble mean? But just the word scramble by itself, what does that word mean? What's another way of saying to scramble? I have probably a better way of saying it. What else will we say? To mix it up. Yeah. To mix up something is to scramble it. Okay. So one of my, actually I shouldn't say one of my favorite kind of eggs, scrambled eggs, right? What is it? 炒蛋, right? Because what do you do when you make those eggs? You mix them up, right? You just, yeah, butter's better. Maybe a little salt, a little, but yeah, a little milk, yeah. But that's one thing. I'm not a cook, but I can make scrambled eggs. But yeah, scrambled eggs. It's an easy breakfast meal. But anyhow, to scramble means to mix up. So, for example, if you say, before yesterday, all of this was in order, but somebody scrambled it up. It's all mixed up. So now it's out of order. Okay. So why don't we say together, scramble, scramble. But scramble has yet another meaning, usually as a 动词, but sometimes as a 名词. What does it also mean? Right. Or to rush, or to run, for example, again, I probably use this other words to describe this, but let's say the 星光三月大圆百 has a big sale. They say 打五折 of everything, right? And so everyone scrambled to grab some items and to get them, or to scrambled into the department. It means they kind of ran or rushed in a little bit of a 乱 sort of idea, where everybody's running or moving or trying to get something. So, for example, you can say, I scrambled to buy tickets for the train because it was a Friday. Okay, it means I kind of rushed over there and tried to get it. Before 农历过年, of course, it's very difficult to buy tickets, right? So you can say, I scrambled to buy the last bus ticket to Taipei before the holiday. Okay, so this idea of to scramble means kind of to climb or rush or run over to get something. Okay, does everybody understand that? Okay, so I think when they say scramble crossing, I think it's kind of that idea that everyone is mixed up together, right? They're kind of coming together. It's not like one row. You know what a scramble crossing is, right? It's usually shaped like an X. I've been on that crossing. I don't know if you've been in Tokyo, Dongjing. There's probably the world's most famous scramble crossing is in Shibuya, in Tokyo. And there's just this, when the light goes green, I guess, for pedestrians, everybody comes walking across the street. That whole intersection is filled with people. So a scramble crossing basically opens the intersection to everyone. It's not just this way and this way like most intersections. The whole intersection is open. And so everybody's all mixed up, right? They're scrambling together. They're scrambled together as they cross the road. Okay, does everybody understand that? Okay, so why don't we... You could scramble onto a rock. So yeah, it has the idea also of climbing onto something. So you can say, I scrambled up the ladder. I scrambled onto a rock. It means I kind of climbed onto something. So yeah, that's yet another meaning. So we have different, at least three meanings here for the word scramble. One is to mix up. One is to kind of rush to do something, to scramble to get something. And one is almost to climb onto something, to scramble up or to scramble over something. Okay. So that word scramble is a very flexible word. So why don't we say it together? Scramble. Scramble. Okay. So scramble crossing sought. Now, of course, sought is another way of is a word for seek, right? Seek, S-E-E-K. They're looking for. They want to do something. They're sought. They're wanted. That would be another word. They're wanted or needed, sought at intersections. Okay. So here it says nationwide effort. Hualien officials said redesign intersections would affect traffic, so it might take time to figure out how the signals should be coordinated. Now, when we say signals, of course, we're talking about traffic signals, red light, green light, yellow light. Those are all signals, right? They signal you whether you should stop or go. Okay, so Hualien, I guess Hualien's talking about this, said that these redesign, if they redesign these, it's going to affect or impact traffic. So it might take time to figure out how to coordinate the signals. This could create some extra mafan. Okay, so let's read I'll read this article. It says, the Ministry of Transportation and Communications yesterday asked local governments to quickly implement, there's that word again, implement scramble crossings at all intersections nationwide after a 3-year-old girl was killed on a pedestrian crossing in Tainan on Monday. Okay, now you probably heard about yet another tragedy. This 3-year-old girl, I think she was crossing with her mother, and a car turned and hit her, hit them, I should say. So they want to put into action these scramble crossings. Okay, now this is a great word. What is pedestrian? Basically a person walking on the street, on the road. So if you go outside and you start walking down the road, you are a pedestrian. So the crosswalk, the banma, what is it? Banma, that's called a pedestrian crosswalk. Okay, so pedestrian can be used as a 名词 or a 形容词. But this is a very good word. Now in America, when we grow up, we have a very common saying, and I think in Taiwan we're learning this now. We always say, we tell drivers, pedestrians first. We always say pedestrians first. That's a slogan, like a phrase we learn. Because what it means is that if there's a pedestrian on the road, you have to allow them. You have to allow them to cross. So why don't we say together, pedestrian. Pedestrian. Right, so you can say, or there are many pedestrians on the road, or this is a pedestrian crosswalk. Okay, so let's read this together. Let's go above here. So this is the 交通部. Okay, the Ministry of Transportation and Communications let's say it again, Transportation and Communications yesterday asked local governments to quickly implement scramble crossings. Let's say those last 3 words again. Implement scramble crossings at all intersections nationwide. After a 3-year-old girl was killed on a pedestrian crossing in Tainan on Monday. Okay. I feel deeply sorry for the incident, Minister of Transportation and Communications Wang Guocai said. The government failed to protect pedestrians' right to cross streets. Okay, so we would say this is a 权利. Of course, you have the right to cross a street when you want to cross a street. So they did not protect that. Okay, so let's read this together. I feel deeply sorry for the incident. Minister of Transportation and Communications Wang Guocai said, the government failed to protect pedestrians' right to cross streets. Okay. So it says here, the girl was crossing at the intersection of Chenggong and Xinyi roads with her mother, a 38-year-old surnamed Li, shortly before 10 a.m. when a 36-year-old woman, surnamed, is it Du, right? Driving a dark blue sedan, made a left turn onto Chenggong Road and collided with the two police said on Monday. Okay, so you know what a sedan is, right? What's a sedan? But specifically, there's a very specific definition for a sedan. How do we know it's a sedan? It can be big or small. What defines a sedan? Does anyone know? 4 doors, yes. So 4 doors is a sedan, okay? It's a kind of car, right? Now, if it has 2 doors, what do we call it? Yeah. So the special word for a 2-door car is a coupe, or I guess in French they say coupe. But we usually say in English, we say coupe, okay? Means a 2-door car. Now, usually, of course, when we're talking about a sedan it has this shape, right? Okay, sorry, I'm a bad artist. But it has that shape. It has the front and the back, because if it's like oh boy, if it's like this, okay, this is not a sedan or a coupe, because it doesn't have that shape. This we would call a hatchback, because the back opens up, or we could call it a compact, or it could be many other things. But the sedan or coupe has to have this shape. It has to have that. Some I've heard some auto industry people, they call this a 3-box car, because it's like they have 3 boxes here, right? 1, 2, 3, right? There's a front and a back, or I don't know which way. Maybe that's the front. Yeah. Anyhow, and if it's a front, this part is called the hood of the car, and this part, the back, is called the trunk. That's a British term. Yeah, B-O-O-T, boot. So if you go to England or Aujo or New Zealand, and they say, or Canada even, maybe Canada, they say a boot, B-O-O-T. Yeah, so the British say B-O-O-T, and for the hood, and for this they say B-O-N-N-E-T. Okay. Sorry, it's a little bit messy. But yeah, so the hood is the front. Usually the engine is under the hood. So why don't we say together, hood. Hood. And then in Britain they say bonnet. Bonnet. You know what a bonnet, it's a hat for women, like an old-fashioned hat, like it comes over your head. We say bonnet. And then for the back, where it opens up, we call that a trunk. Trunk. T-R-U-N-K. So usually that's like when you put your baggage or your luggage or other stuff in there, you put junk in your trunk. And then the British would say a boot. Boot. B-O-O-T. So it's like, an English boot, like 牛仔鞋. Yeah. A van, well, that would be like a 面包车, like a 九人座, whatever they call that here. So that's a van, V-A-N. But yeah, so a coupe or a sedan has to have this shape. It can't be like this. It has to be like that. And again, a sedan has 4 doors, and a coupe has 2 doors. So why don't we say that word together? Sedan. Sedan. Coupe. Coupe. Right. Okay. So anyhow, this 36-year-old woman surnamed Du was driving a dark blue sedan and made a left turn and collided. Now, I think we've learned the word before. What does collide mean? Hit. Yeah. It simply means to hit, right? So if you hit another car, you say, I collided with another car. And if we want to turn that into a 名词, we turn it into the word collision. C-O-L-L-I-S-O-N. Sorry, S-I-O-N. Sorry, S-I-O-N. So C-O-L-L-I-S-I-O-N. Collision. Okay, collision. Okay, so you can say there was a big collision outside the building. Okay, so why don't we say together, collided with. Collided with. And then the 名词, collision. Collision. Right, you can say there was a collision between my car and her car. Okay. Okay, so yeah, anyhow, there was this terrible accident. Let's read this together. The girl was crossing at the intersection of Chunggong and Shini roads with her mother, a 38-year-old surnamed Li, shortly before 10 a.m., when a 36-year-old woman surnamed Du, driving a dark blue sedan, made a left turn onto Chunggong Road and collided with the two, police said on Monday. Okay, and of course, you know, I think you all know, surname just means your Xing Ming, yeah. Xing, right, not your Xing Ming. Yeah, so surname, you can say I'm surname He or whatever. Why don't we say it again? Surnamed. Surnamed. Now we can ask somebody, you can say, what is your surname? Okay, so that can be a mingzi. What is your surname? In other words, you know, actually, I'll be honest, in America, we don't use the word surname too often. We simply say, what is your last name? Okay, what is your last name? But here in Taiwan, I notice they say surname a lot. Okay. That's what I heard. She said that? She said that? Oh, I didn't know that. It's unnecessary. I mean, obviously not. In America, you would not do that. You know, that seems kind of, I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing. But, you know, obviously it's her fault and it's a terrible tragedy, but you wouldn't give your child away to somebody else to yeah, I think that's a little bit unusual. So I think she's saying that to show her remorse. Yeah, actually, that's a very good word. So if you feel very remorseful, and remorseful means you feel very regretful. So if you feel remorse or regret, remorse is a feeling of, you know, you feel sorry for something, sorry that you did something, okay? So you can say after she did that, she felt deep remorse for her action or for her words. It's a regret. It's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or that's terrible, I'm so sorry. Okay, so why don't we say together, remorse, remorse, regret, regret. Yeah. I think remorse is more about an emotion of saying I should not have done that. Regret is more like 后悔, right? I regret that, you know. So it's slightly different, but they're very similar. Okay. So yeah, I think she was doing that to show her deep remorse for because she's a mother too, right? So there's two mothers and they're almost the same age. Okay. So let's keep going. It says Wang said that the ministry on Tuesday asked local transportation officials to quickly install scramble crossings, which allow pedestrians to cross in any direction with all traffic signals for vehicles red. This is a little bit confusing. It says to cross in any direction with all traffic signals for vehicles red. Oh, I guess it means that all 4 traffic signals would be red. Okay. So yeah. That's okay. So yeah, so let's read this together. Wang said, excuse me, Wang said that the ministry on Tuesday asked local transportation officials let's say that 2 words there, transportation officials to quickly install scramble crossings, which allow pedestrians to cross in any direction with all traffic signals for vehicles red. Okay, let's say a word again. Vehicles. Vehicles. Now, of course, you know what a vehicle is. It's any moving, vehicle. Yeah, like a bicycle, a car, a motorcycle. We call those all vehicles, right? Basically things with wheels. I was just thinking about that. I don't know if we would technically, if we would say a train. I guess we say it's a kind of vehicle because it has wheels, right? No, a boat's definitely not a vehicle. I think vehicles too, they have to be on land. We don't say an airplane. Well, okay, there is a very technical way of saying, like sometimes when we talk about space, I've heard the word vehicle used before, like something moving through space. But normally, I think that's a very, very specialized use of that word. Normally, a vehicle would be something that moves on the land, on the ground, and usually it has wheels, okay, like a car. That's a vehicle. Okay, it says this means that when pedestrians are given the green light, all vehicles would have red lights to allow safe crossing, he said. This would ensure that pedestrians are not hit by turning vehicles. Okay, so, I'll be honest with you. I totally think Taiwan needs to improve their road safety for pedestrians, but I think this is a little bit extreme. I would call this an overreaction. Okay, you know what an overreaction means? To overreact means that you go too far, right? Overkill. So I think it's 2 R's. And we could say to overreact, okay? Overreact means you go too far to react, to respond to something. So why don't we say together, overreact, overreact, overreaction, overreaction. I kind of feel like, okay, I agree that scramble crossings are great at big intersections, right? But I find I don't know how they could implement this for all intersections, right? I mean, every intersection is going to be a scramble crossing. I think a couple things. One is technically, I think it's difficult. And the second thing is, I think it's going to it would slow traffic down, right? Because, if you have every single intersection's a scramble crossing, it will slow everything down. I'm no expert, but I would think that maybe it would slow everything down because after all the pedestrians are crossed, then what about, traffic still has to move in each direction? I don't know. I just think, sure. And I think if you're careless, well, then maybe the government should raise their fines. They should do a better job with driver education. I think driver education is very, very important, right? Because when you start driving, you get trained to drive in a certain way. And I'll be very honest. I love Taiwan, but I do think the driver license test, the test that you have to take, it doesn't teach you how to drive safely. It's like we say an obstacle course. You know what an obstacle course is? Okay. You know what an obstacle course often is for fun, right? Like when you're doing a B-side and you say, okay, you have to climb up this and then cross over there and run behind that and crawl through there. We call that an obstacle course. Like, soldiers, Junren, when they're doing their Shunlian, they have to do all these things, right? I feel like the driving test here is kind of like an obstacle course. So they're like, okay, drive between these lines and then park here and don't cross that line. But really, that's not really teaching you how to drive safely. It's just teaching you how to maneuver the car, right? And I know when they have those driving schools, my friends have been there and they say, okay, they put a tiedzi here and they're like, okay, now turn the wheel 3 times and then turn the wheel here and look at the sticker. And I'm like, this isn't teaching you how to drive safely, right? It's just teaching you how to pass the test, okay? So to me, I think that driver education means teaching people not just how to pass the test or drive, turn maneuver the car or motorcycle, it teaches you how to drive safely, right? Which means that, okay, when I turn left or right, I need to check, right? I need to stop and look and make sure that there's nobody walking across the street, you know? Or when I change lanes, you know, I think drivers are taught this even in Taiwan, is when you turn, if you're gonna change lanes into your left, we call that a blind spot. There's a blind spot there where you can't, if you look in your mirror, you can't see the vehicle. You actually have to turn your head and look. But I'll tell you one little thing that drives me crazy in Taiwan is using the turn signals, right? I noticed, you know, in America, we're taught very strictly that if you're going to, in your car or motorcycle, if you're going to make a turn and you're 方向灯, right? You're supposed to signal like 100公尺 before you turn. Okay, 100公尺. But in Taiwan, I notice people signal as they're turning. While they're turning, the signal goes on. I'm like, what? This doesn't do me any good, right? Because they're already turning and the signal goes on. If you signal 100公尺 before you turn, then everyone knows, okay, you're turning. And of course, some people don't signal at all. But I think that, you know, again, all of this has to do with education, good driver training and good driver education. Driving is a responsibility and it's a privilege. It's a privilege. Not anybody, it's not your right to have a driver's license. Of course, if you make a mistake or you don't abide by the law, that right can be taken away from you, right? You lose your driver's license. So I think people have to understand that if you're going to drive, you need to drive safely and you need to be taught how to drive safely. So I think this is all part of education. I think creating scramble crossings at every intersection in Taiwan is an overreaction, and it's really not the solution to that's my opinion, of course. It certainly would help. I think if people know that if they do something like that, they're going to be fine. So I'll give you an example, and I think this is a positive thing in Taiwan, is now the government says you have to yield to pedestrians when you make a turn. I notice even today coming here, I notice people are doing it more and more and more because they're afraid of the fines, right? What is it, 6,000块 or something like that, right? So there's another comment. I'll teach you another expression in America. On crosswalks, we always say you need to yield to pedestrians. Okay. Okay. Now this word yield, you see it on many signs in America on traffic, and usually it's a triangular sign. It says yield, Y-I-E-L-D. And yield, it simply means in Taiwan, instead of yield, they write the word rang. Yeah. So rang is yield. So yield to pedestrian means if there's a pedestrian walking across the street, you need to allow them to go. They have the right to go. You need to stop, especially if they have the green light, right? And you're turning, you have to. Now, of course, if they're walking across the road and they're, pedestrians should not, of course, do something else. And I'll write this for you too. Yeah. Does everybody know what jaywalk means? If you cross the road and there's no 斑马线, there's no crosswalk, you just walk across the street. That's called jaywalking. Okay, so I did this yesterday. I confess. I parked my motorcycle across from Xinguang Sanyue, and I didn't want to walk up to the Honglidong, so I just walked across the street. So I jaywalked. Okay, I'm guilty. But yeah, jaywalking. Yeah, tomorrow I'll probably get a ticket in the mail. But yeah, jaywalking, of course, is not, pedestrians should not jaywalk. But if you're crossing at a green light, at a crosswalk, then cars need to, or motorcycles and cars need to yield to pedestrians. So I guess, to be honest, I have no idea where this expression comes from. It's a funny word. I don't know. It's a funny word. So why don't we say together, yield. Yield. Yield to pedestrians. Yield to pedestrians. Jaywalk. Jaywalk. Yeah, and then this word, obstacle course. Obstacle course. Right. So yeah, so I think this whole, it's good that in Taiwan now they're discussing this. This is a debate. People think everybody, the government, the public says, we need to improve the situation. What do we do? So there's different ideas, of course, about what, and the government obviously says, well, we think this is going to help. Certainly it might help, but maybe it's an overreaction. Maybe they should limit certain intersections to scramble crossings. But to me, again, like if it's some little shizuruko, why would you put a scramble crossing there? So yeah, anyhow, I do, this is my opinion, I do feel like sometimes all governments, when they have not been doing a good job of enforcing or doing something, and then there's a lot of pressure on them, then they overreact. Then they're like, okay, look, I'm doing this, right? I'm going to show you that I can do something, and then there's this overreaction. So anyhow, so let's read this together. Oh, sorry. It says, this means when pedestrians are given the green light, all vehicles would have red lights to allow safe crossing. So anyhow, let's read this. This means that when pedestrians are given the green light, all vehicles would have red lights to allow safe crossing. He said, this would ensure that pedestrians are not hit by turning vehicles. Okay, so below here it says scramble crossings are widely used in other countries. That's true, but I would say that other countries don't put them at every single intersection, right? They use them at certain intersections, not every intersection. So I don't know. I honestly don't know if the 交通部 honestly means they want to put a scramble crossing at every single intersection, or do they mean just at major intersections? I don't know. This is the big question. So yeah. Okay, so let's read a couple more paragraphs and then maybe we can look at one more story. It says, separately, the Hualien County government is installing new traffic signals at 3 intersections in downtown Hualien that would allow scramble access. Okay, let's read these 2 paragraphs together. As the design would affect traffic flows in the downtown area when there is high traffic volume, we might need time to figure out how the signals should be coordinated. Hualien Construction Department Director Deng Ziyu said. Okay, so I think he points out a very good point, is this is going to affect traffic when there's high traffic volume. Volume means what? Amount, right? We could say sometimes volume is amount. There's another word I taught you. It's capacity, right? So if we say, what is the volume of this jar or this bottle or this room, we could say, or this bus. It means what volume or how much can it hold. Now, volume is often used for liquid, but it can also be used for other things like traffic, right? The volume of traffic volume, high traffic amount, or capacity is also like the limit. What is the capacity of this bus? It might be, 30 people. Maximum. Sometimes we say max or maximum capacity means the most people that can sit or ride in this bus. So why don't we say together, capacity, volume. Yeah, volume, again, it simply means how much can something hold. But here we're talking about high traffic volume. Okay, so it sounds like Hualien is installing these new signals. I don't know. When I lived in Hualien, it was very, very quiet. They didn't need scramble crossings, but maybe things have changed. Okay, so let's read this. Separately, the Hualien County government is installing new traffic signals. At 3 intersections in downtown Hualien that would allow scramble access. As the design could affect traffic flows in the downtown area when there is high traffic volume, we might need time to figure out how the signals should be coordinated. Quality and Construction Department Director Deng Ziyu said. Okay, it's very important to coordinate traffic lights, right? Because I'm sure you've been frustrated before when you're driving down the road and it's red light, you stop, you go to the next one, it's red light, you stop, you go to the next one, it's red light, and you stop instead of going through green lights, right? So often we say we need to have coordinated traffic signals so that you're not always stopping, starting, stopping, starting. You can keep going through. You gotta have to stop sometime, but hopefully the lights can be coordinated so that you get more green lights instead of red lights as you drive. Yeah, that can be very frustrating as well. Okay. Any questions about this? I think we can go on to a different story, but I think it's a serious problem that needs to be addressed in Taiwan. But I do think that perhaps there's more than one way. That's a scramble crossing there. I know in Taipei, near Xini district, I've noticed there are a lot of scramble crossings. And I in Taichung, near Xinguang Sanyue, the department store, I've seen them over there. Oh, that's the one? In Taichung? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, okay. I've been hearing a lot about this in the news as well, of course, and it seems like people are talking more and more about climate change, okay? The weather seems to be getting a little bit freaky, a little bit weird sometimes, unusual. Okay, so let's look at this. It says, China warns of severe heat posing risks to power grid. Now, you know what a power grid is, right? When you have your electrical power, there's a grid. A grid is almost, when I think of a grid, I think of it like a network. But a grid, when I think of a grid, it's almost like this, right? There's a grid. If we say a grid pattern, a pattern of a grid is always like this, right? That's a grid, okay? That pattern is called a grid. So when we say a power grid, it means because the electrical power kind of goes up and down and both ways. So that's a grid. It's like a system. It's like a network. So we say power for electricity, DND. Okay. So severe heat posing. Okay. Pose means it offers a risk. It provides a risk, 风险 to the power grid. It could threaten the power grid if you have the severe heat. Okay. Super high heat. Okay. So it says here, brutally hot weather is expected to hit China this summer, threatening a new round of power shortages that last year disrupted global supply chains of everything from vehicles to solar panels. So, obviously what happens in China is a problem, right? Because they have all these factories there. And remember last year they had to cut power in many places, and because they cut power, the factories could not produce items or enough items, and then that affected the global supply chain. Okay, this global supply chain. So we've talked about this word before. What does the word brutal mean? Cruel. It could mean very harsh, severe. Okay, so there's many different words. We could say the weather is very severe, harsh. Here's the word cruel. Cruel, if we talk about a brutal person, could be a very cruel person. But of course here we're talking about weather. So if you say the weather is brutally hot, you could say it's severely hot. It's harsh weather. Sometimes we say the weather is very. We talk about the heat being very punishing. The punishing heat or the punishing weather. Means it's so hot. It's like almost like punishing me. It's hurting me. So we can say the punishing heat or the punishing weather. Now, it doesn't have to be heat. It could be the punishing cold or wind or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be heat. I mean, you could say the brutal cold weather. It's brutally cold outside, or brutally, I guess we could say wet or dry or whatever. There any severe weather. Okay, so why don't we say the word brutal? Brutal. Brutally. Brutally. Severe. Severe. Harsh. Harsh. Cruel. Cruel. Punishing. Punishing. Right. Yeah, often I hear people talking about the punishing heat. They're like, oh, it's so hot today. I can't go outside. Just the punishing heat, of the weather of today. Okay, so brutally hot weather is expected to hit China this summer, threatening a new round. Okay, we say a round of power shortages. Okay, the disrupt means like to interrupt, right? To disrupt, to interrupt, to stop. Okay, okay, so let's read this together. Brutally hot weather is expected to hit China this summer, threatening a new round of power shortages that last year disrupted global supply chains of everything from vehicles to solar panels. Okay, let's say it again. Vehicles, solar panels. You know what solar panels are, right? We see them on many buildings here. They collect the sun energy for electricity. Okay, so it says here the electricity supply situation would be tight across the entire nation this summer, state-run China Energy News reported, citing the Chinese State Grid Energy Research Institute. Okay, when we say the situation or the supply will be tight, of course, you know what that means, right? Tight means very very dangerous. Yeah, if something is tight, it means we might not have enough. We might run out, right? Okay. It's very close to being not enough. Okay, so let's read this together. The electricity supply situation would be tight across the entire nation this summer. State-run China Energy News reported, citing the Chinese State Grid Energy Research Institute. Institute. Yeah, it's some sort of 研究员 or something like that. Okay, it says Central, Eastern, and Southwestern provinces are likely to experience shortages during periods of peak demand, the Institute said. What is peak demand? But not very high, it's the highest demand, right? So, for example, in Taiwan, we could say maybe during the summer, peak energy demand is maybe in the middle of the day, right? Why? Because it's super hot and everyone has their 冷气 on, their air conditioners, and so the energy demand goes up really high. And peak, it's like the 山峰, it's the top of the demand. So the highest, the period of highest demand, we say peak demand. Okay, so why don't we say it together? Peak demand. Peak demand. Okay, so at those periods, maybe there's going to be a shortage, or it's probable that they're going to have shortages. Okay, so let's read this. Central, Eastern, and Southwestern provinces are likely to experience shortages. During periods of peak demand, the Institute said. Okay. So it says here, a heat wave is already scorching parts of Asia, even before the official start of the Northern Hemisphere summer, sending temperatures to a record 44.2 degrees Celsius in Vietnam, shutting schools early in the Philippines, and putting India on alert for blackouts. Okay, so I don't know what the deal is. Right now in Taichung, we're having this nice cool weather, and everyone else is having this really hot weather. So I don't know. I don't know if we're going to get this kind of weather this summer in Taiwan or not. But what is you know what a heat wave is, right? Usually we have heat waves, and in the winter we have cold waves too, right? Where you have this wave of every super high temperatures or wave of very cold temperatures. So what is the word scorch? Yeah, it's almost like to put extra burn, to put enough heat to burn something, okay? So I'll give you an example. If you say, today I spent too long outside and I was scorched, my skin was scorched by the sun, it almost means, it doesn't necessarily mean you were burned, but it could mean you were burned by the sun, okay? So it's this idea, it's very, very, very hot, almost to the point of burning something. So you can say the fire scorched the meat. The meat was scorched by the fire, or the sun scorched my skin. So it's like this extreme heat. Okay, everybody understand that? Okay, so why don't we say it together? Scorch, scorch, scorching, scorching. Okay, so it's already scorching parts of Asia, even before the start of the Northern Hemisphere summer. Now, of course, the Southern Hemisphere, like Aujo, Australia, they're starting their winter, right? So we live in the Northern Hemisphere, the north of the equator, northern part of the planet, of the Earth. So let's say this word together, hemisphere. Hemisphere. Okay, so yeah. And what's a blackout? Yeah, it's like a complete a widespread power outage. We've had those in Taiwan even recently, where the electricity just completely goes out in a whole area, or maybe even a whole city. There's no electricity. We call that a blackout. Even if it happens during the daytime, even in the daytime, we still call it a blackout, because it, obviously you think black, it's nighttime, but this is daytime also. So why don't we say together, blackouts? Blackouts. Yeah, so India is worried, or they're prepared, they're on the alert for blackouts. Okay. In China, sandstorms? I think there are, because America has a lot of desert too, right? So like maybe Las Vegas. I believe I'm pretty sure Las Vegas gets sandstorms sometimes. Maybe not like Zhongdong or China, but they do get some. Yeah. So yeah. Okay, so let's read this together. A heat wave is already scorching parts of Asia, even before the official start of the Northern Hemisphere summer. Hemisphere. Sending temperatures to a record 44.2 degrees Celsius. Degrees Celsius. Okay. In Vietnam. Shutting schools early in the Philippines, and putting India on alert for blackouts. Okay, so I want to read this last paragraph because it is, there's a good word here. It says, climate change is exacerbating the frequency of extreme weather incidents. Scientists at research groups such as World Weather Attribution say. Okay, this word here, exacerbating, great word. What does this mean? Does anyone know? It means to worsen. Yes, to make worse. So if you say right now, the hot weather is exacerbating my energy, or no, not my energy. It's exacerbating my fever. Let's say you already have a 发烧 and it's hot outside. You say it's making it worse. Or you can say the hot weather is exacerbating the drought. You know, right now in southern Nan Taiwan, there's not enough water, so we say a drought. It's making the drought worse. Okay. You could say the cold weather is exacerbating my cold. You know, my 感冒, right? So to make something worse is to exacerbate. Now we say here ek, like ek, right? Exacerbate, Z-A, exacerbate. So it's, yeah. So there's like a Z sound, exacerbate. Okay. Yeah, exacerbate. Yeah, it's a hard word to say, but let's say it together. Exacerbate. Exacerbate. Exacerbating. Right. So they're saying that the climate, you know, the changing climate is making worse. You know, the frequency of these extreme weather incidents, the frequency, you know, there's these extreme weather, like extreme cold, extreme heat. It's making it even worse. It's exacerbating this frequency. It's making, yeah, you could say it's aggravating. Aggravate means to make or to irritate. But aggravate is closer to the word to irritate, right? Like to irritate something, to make it, yeah. So that's an A. So yeah, aggravate, to irritate, to exacerbate really is to make worse. Okay. Why don't we say those two other words? Aggravate. Aggravate. So if something aggravates you, it kind of makes you angry, it makes you upset, or irritates you. Let's say the other word, to irritate. Irritate. So an aggravation could be something that causes you trouble or makes you irritated or gives you mafan, right? You can say that's very aggravating behavior, or that's a real aggravation for me, or irritation for me. But exacerbate really is to make something already more bad, you know, more worse. Okay, so let's read this and then we're out of time. Climate change is exacerbating the frequency of extreme weather incidents. Extreme weather incidents. Scientists at research groups such as World Weather Attribution say. Okay, that's the name of another Yuan. Okay, so yeah, so this word exacerbate is a good word. It's a word that we use actually, even though it's a long word, it's actually a word we use quite often. So yeah, it's a good new word. Okay, well that's all we have time for today, but hope you stay safe on the roads. Watch out for cranes falling on your head. Yeah, so stay safe. Okay, we'll see you next time.
如果有空的话，麻烦帮我做一下我们美国资料中心的问卷哈。那如果刚刚填过了就 OK， 谢谢。好，再麻烦大家，谢谢。